Hey guys, it's Andy. I'm back here for another installment of Make a Mega. The previous episode, the Johto starter episode, I felt it went pretty well. Seems like you guys thought it went pretty well, so I'm excited to bring you guys the newest episode that I could come up with. Now today I'm presenting a case that is near and dear to me ever since I was a child back in Gen 1 in the 90s. I'm sure you know what it is by now because I'm pretty sure you probably already looked at the title, but in case you don't, allow me to explain. Today's episode is going to be focused on Golem and Machamp. You see, back in the day, there were these 4 Pokemon grouped together: Golem, Machamp, Alakazam, and Gengar. Listen to me, back in the day, as if I'm old. But it's true. Aside from those 4, there were the starters, Pidgey, Dragonite, and mons that evolved via stone, and nothing else had 2-stage evolution, so they either only evolved once or not at all. And Alakazam, Gengar, Golem, and Machamp, who I will collectively refer to as Agam for the remainder of this video, all evolved via trading, which meant that if you didn't have a friend or a second Game Boy, you could never evolve to the final forms of these Pokemon and use them, to their fullest potential. I'm not going to get into my stance on trade evolutions in general right now because I don't feel it's necessary, but it stands to reason that Game Freak wanted some way to prevent players from easily obtaining a Stage 2 evolution Pokemon, so under this pretext that these Pokemon are worthy of additional effort to obtain, it would be pretty safe to assume that these are considerably good Pokemon, right? Well, I wouldn't be the first to say that I feel like there's a huge imbalance among these 4. Alakazam and Gengar pretty much unanimously outclass the other 2, Machamp and Golem, and have pretty much done so since the beginning up until now. Alakazam and Gengar just have so much good going for them, with an amazing offensive stat distribution as well as move pool, not to mention move pools that allow for even more diverse roles to be performed successfully. Golem, on the other hand, wants to be a physical tank, but it's just too top-heavy and has way too many weaknesses that can be exploited. Not to mention Rhyperior exists, which does just about everything Golem could do except a few niche roles, which Golem can do better, like Stealth Rock, Sturdy, into the Explosion or something. Machamp is in a very similar position, again being another bulky physical tank, without quite as many problems as Golem, but still outclassed in just about every way by Conkeldurr, except for spamming No Guard Dynamic Punch. So the imbalance had already been in place for a long time, but it was the ultimate slap in the face to Golem and Machamp during Gen 6, when both Alakazam and Gengar got Mega Evolutions and Golem and Machamp didn't. I cannot think of a single reason to justify giving Alakazam and Gengar Mega Evolutions, but not Golem or Machamp, who need it way more than Alakazam or Gengar. Makes about as little sense as only giving Mega Alakazam 90 base stats instead of 100 like they did for everything else. But hey, they fixed that, so maybe they can fix this now too? Fingers crossed? Highly unlikely considering they gave Golem an Alolan form, which is another complete slap in the face. I don't want a Golem that loses its ground stab. I want a Golem and Machamp with 100 additional base stats and an ability buff, aka Mega Forms. And at 4 minutes into the video, I think it's about time I got started on my idea for just that. Let's start with Golem, who needs it more than Machamp. Golem is one of my favorite Pokemon going way back, but it has so many flaws. It's kind of hard for me to even imagine Golem ever being good, but that's what I tried to make today in this build I came up with. So to make sense of where this idea originated, we need to take a look at Golem itself. If we look at Geodude and Graveler, we can see that it's basically just a rock with eyes, but as it evolves into Golem, it develops a separate head and appendages, as if there's something living inside the rock. The rock is a shell, and there's this other entity that lives inside the rock. I don't know, that probably isn't actually the case, but it's always just seemed strange to me. So a few years ago, in fact, I came up with this idea that maybe for a Mega Golem, Golem could like shed that rock layer and reveal like its true form inside that rock shell. So that's what I went with for my first idea, which was a rock dragon type. I figured dragon just because it kind of looks like a reptile coming out of the rock. So I figured maybe like a rock dragon Golem would be a pretty cool idea. But I quickly strayed away from that idea, mostly due to uncertainty. Like maybe that is just another part of the rock that is Golem. So I don't want to, assume that anything about Golem is reptilious or dragon-like. So I came up with another idea, which I like much better. To begin with, I would keep its rock ground type because Edgequake is just such a nice stab to have. For the ability, I would give it Sand Rush. I also thought about giving it Sand Force, since Golem actually has access to Rock Polish, so it would be able to boost up to the level of Sand Rush, while it could definitely benefit from the boost of Sand Force. However, setting up with something as frail and as exploitable as Golem, I would rather just give it the speed boost right away. So that's why I prefer Sand Rush to Sand Force. As for the 100 additional base stats I would give Golem, I would immediately drop 45 into speed. This would boost Golem speed up to 90, putting it 2 points above Excadrill, which is a necessity in my opinion, because if you had less speed than Excadrill, Mega Golem would be outclassed by a non-Mega Pokemon, and that's just a bad look in itself. And then after that, I would give it 35 additional attack, bringing it up to 155. As for the remaining 20 points, I just put them in special defense because the way I envisioned this Golem would be that it ultimately did shed that rock layer and became a more condensed, like smooth rock. Get it? Because that item would go hand in hand with a build like this. But no, I feel like it would lose some of its physical defense, so it might even lose a bit of phys def in favor of other stats, but I feel like 45 speed, 35 attack, 20 spadef is a good starting point. But yeah, speaking of smooth rock, I feel like this plus maybe something like Hippowdon could be the new core to replace T-Tar Excadrill, because with this you would be stronger than Excadrill, have better stab than Excadrill with Edgequake instead of Quake Ironhead. You lose out on Swords Dance, but I feel like it's still easily comparable to the core, perhaps even a little better. I haven't sat down and thought about all the intricate ways you could compare the two cores, but overall for a Mega Golem build, I would have to say I'm pretty satisfied with this. It still has pretty decent bulk, even a little more on the spadef side. Still has some glaring 4x weaknesses and stuff, but I feel like its offensive capabilities more than make up for it, and that this would be a Mega that finally gives Golem its time to shine. So yep, that's what I'm going with for Golem. Now let's move on to Machamp. So like I said earlier about Machamp, Conkeldurr pretty much outclasses it in every role except for being able to spam No Guard Dynamic Punch. So I thought about retaining No Guard for Mega Machamp. I'm not really a fan of that though. I feel it's a bit too gimmicky and even limiting. Like it would basically force Machamp to run Dynamic Punch, like Stone Edge stuff, to like take advantage of that ability, and I think a different ability would give it more options, which I think it would appreciate more in the long run. So I was thinking of other abilities that I could maybe give it. Iron Fist came to mind, but again, Conkeldurr has that. Conkeldurr actually benefits from it more though because it has access to Mach Punch and Drain Punch, which Machamp doesn't get either. Its only punching move I think is Bullet Punch. Oh, and the Elemental Punches, but yeah, Iron Fist wouldn't really be helpful. And I couldn't really think of any other abilities that would benefit it, so I tried coming up with a new ability. This is where it hit me, because Machamp has a perfectly viable, unexplored bit of lore in its belt that it carries. It says that the belt restrains Machamp and actually inhibits it from accessing its full power. So the first thing I could think of about a Mega Machamp with its belt off would be the ability Pure Power or Huge Power. I think this would be a justifiable ability lore-wise because that belt is supposed to limit so much of Machamp's raw power, and I think huge power would just make the most sense. However, gameplay-wise, I think there's no way you could say this wouldn't be unbalanced, because Mega Mawile, the strongest Pokemon with huge power, I believe is only at base 100, or at 105 maybe? Yeah, I think Medicham is at 100 and Mawile's at 105, but Machamp regular form is at 130, so if that thing were to have huge power, that would just be way too unbalanced. Then I got to thinking maybe the belt ought to be left a mystery, because I don't think anything other than giving it huge power would be, justifiable, but huge power would obviously just be way too broken on Machamp. The more I thought about it though, I just couldn't think of anything other than the belt, because I figured they're probably not going to give Machamp like a special form like they did with Ash Greninja, make it like beltless Machamp. So if we ever get anything to do with beltless Machamp, I'm assuming it's just probably going to be, I'm assuming we'll get nothing at all, but if we were to get something, I think our best bet would be Mega Machamp. So I finally decided on a belt removing ability dubbed No Restraints. Originally what I had this ability do was once Machamp, or Mega Machamp rather, hits the field, it immediately gets an attack and a speed boost. However, even this I feel would be way too much, so I nerfed it to just gaining a speed boost. I'm not sure if after that first initial time it gets sent out would be the only time the speed boost activates, like if it's like a one-time thing like Disguise or something. I think it would be fine to let it activate every time you come in, but either way, I think giving it one speed boost is the most balanced ability I've given Mega Machamp so far. As for the stat buffs I would give Machamp, I immediately gave it 30 speed, bumping it up to 85. This way it would outspeed base 80 Scarfers after the No Restraint ability activates. After that I'd give it 40 attack, bumping it up to 170. And then finally 15 defense and 15 special defense. Ideally anyway, I mean you could give it some special attack, but the main thing would be the 30 speed and the 40 attack. Combine this with its No Restraints ability and you basically get Kyurem Black level attack stats with like Nidoking level speed, essentially at +1 too, without being locked into an attack with Scarf. So I think this thing might be a little too good, but let me know what you think. If you think this would be too overpowered, or if you think it's just right, or if you think it could be buffed even more. Either way, that about wraps up this episode of the physical duo of Agam. I hope you all enjoyed this, and I also hope that Game Freak actually does something about this, because I feel this is completely unjust. If you feel the same, be sure to leave a like and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and would like to see more Make a Mega episodes. But until that time, I am Elogee. Thank you for watching, and have a good day, guys.